it's story time.
Blah, 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 blah.
Hello, my children. Today's story is from Bedtime Tales by Enid Blyton. This story is illustrated by Roger D. Clark. Today's story is Corovell, the Children's Dustman. Once upon a time, long, long ago, the world became so full of exciting happenings that the children could not go to sleep at night. Mothers and fathers began to get worried. The fairies too were anxious, for when the children did not sleep, they became cross and tired and, of course, could not see any fairies. And the fairies did not like that at all, for they loved playing with the children. So the king of the fairies called a great meeting, to which all the fairies, big and little, came. "I will offer a reward," said the king, "to any fairy who can find something to make all the children go to sleep at the proper time." All the fairies were very excited. They began to make plans at once. "I know what I shall do," said one. "I shall string some baby stars together and hold them in front of the children's eyes. They will be dazzled with the starshine that they will fall asleep at once." "I don't think much of that idea," said another fairy. "I'm going to find the magic word in an old book and make them into a sleep song. Then I shall sing it, and all children will go to sleep listening to me." Each fairy had a different idea, and each began to try to do what he or she had planned. The necklace of baby stars was no use, for the brightness made the children more awake than ever. The magic sleep song did not send some of them to sleep, but it kept the others awake. Another fairy tried stroking the children's hair very softly, but while it brought sleep to some, it fidgeted others. Other fairies danced softly around the candles in the children's bedrooms, but they were so interested in watching the fairies that they became more wide awake than ever. The fairies began to feel that there was really nothing to be done, and one by one they gave up trying. Great gloom settled over fairyland, for the tired children were too much cross ever to play with the fairies in the daytime. Now, all this time, there was one little fairy called Corovell, who was very busy indeed. All one day he was scraping the bloom off the darkest red roses he could find in fairyland, and shaking it down into a yellow sack he was carrying. On another day he went to all the blue butterflies he knew, and begged them each to give him a little powder from one of their wings. Because they liked little Corovell, they shook some of their powder into his outstretched hands, and flew off into the sunshine. Corovell carefully mixed it with the rose bloom in his sack. The next morning he scraped the sunshine from the top of all the little puddles shining in the sun. This he mixed carefully with some black powder from the middle of bright red poppies. He took the softest and brightest green moss growing in the palace wall and powdered it into tiny, tiny pieces. Then he mixed into it the magic scent of the June wild roses, and shook it all up together with the other powders and dust. As he was carrying the sack along through the wood, that night he picked out a star shining in the puddle and put it into his sack, just for luck. To finish off, he stirred it all up well with the brightest feather from the kingfisher's breast. When Corovell was satisfied with his mixture, he took his yellow sack on his shoulder and went to King's palace. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing low, "I have discovered something which will make any child sleepy." "Prove it," said King eagerly. Corovell flew into a nursery full of naughty and tired children. "Now watch," he said softly. He dipped his hand into his sack and, pulling out a handful of glittering dust, he sprinkled some of it into each child's eyes. The baby child fell asleep at once. The next smallest crept over to her mother and, laying her hand down, went to sleep. All the other children stopped quarreling and began to rub their eyes, saying, "Oh, I'm so sleepy." "Well done," said the king. "It is a wonderful discovery. What is your sleeping dust made of?" Corovell told him, and he said, "It is not only makes the children go to sleep, but it makes them dream of roses and butterflies and poppies and starshine, all the beautiful things in the world." "Splendid!" cried the king. "The children will soon to be happy in the daytime now, so we can play with them again. What will you have for your reward?" "Make me the children's dustman," said the little fairy, kneeling down before the king. "Grant that I may be their special nighttime friend, and that they may all know and love me." "Very well, that shall be your reward," answered the king. "You shall be the children's dustman, and make the children sleepy at night time, so that the next day they will not be too tired to see us when we come to play with them." And every night since then, quick as a gleam on a dragonfly's wing, along comes Corovell the dustman with his yellow sack of magic sleep dust. He sprinkles some of it into every child's eye, and they grow sleepier and sleepier, and at last fall softly asleep to dream of flowers and birds, butterflies and starshine, until daytime peeps in through the window.